Hello viewers, welcome to the Art Lounge Alley. This is Figure Drawing Basics Part 87, and I'm gonna jump right into where I left off last week. Which is right here. What you're looking at is the next phase, or the next chapter, next idea, next lesson of constructing a face. And what it's doing is using this model right here. This is based off of a photograph to create something similar to it. Using this model to create more characters from your imagination, from for whatever purpose that you have, you know, to have a basis, basically, to start somewhere. It could be intimidating to a lot of people. I know a lot of times that's always a question that pops up in my mind as well. Whenever I sit down to create something, it's always the question of, you know, where am I going to take this, right? When you start off with a blank canvas and there's nothing on paper, that question should be the first thing that comes up in your mind is, what am I going to do? What am I going to create on here? And starting off with a photograph really has a lot of benefits to it, because it gets the juices flowing, right? You start drawing, you start focusing, you're getting into the rhythm, and that already gets the train moving, you know. So that's already a huge step forward. You're overcoming the first obstacle. Usually the hardest one is just to get things moving. So working off of the photograph, working off of some reference, you know, if you're trying to develop a character, if you're trying to motivate yourself to, you know, start on something, it's a great way to do it. So this being the photograph right here, as a basis, you could see like the tilt of the head is still there. There are certain elements that I borrowed from it, like the eyes, you know, just having how they're shaped, how they're drawn, using that as something for this character. Certain creases on the face as well, and all of this stuff is moldable, right? You could use any of this stuff. You know, you could use the creases or the folds on the forehead, or you could exaggerate them. You can have them be on both sides of the face. as opposed to just one. You had a mustache there, so you could exaggerate the mustache and make it longer if you wanted. But basically you could see how you're just borrowing elements, or you could borrow a lot more. In this example, I'm going to say it's a little bit closer to this one because the face and its structure is a little bit more similar as opposed to this one. I think because of the mustache, it's exaggerated, but still it's different, right? The hair is different. It's moved up a little bit more. The hairline is moved up a little bit more. The brows are thicker. In fact, based off of the reference, should be pretty thick. But yeah, anyway, you could, the shape of the eyebrows, they're different. The eyes might be a little bit more, a little bit smaller, not as wide. The nose is longer. The lips are a little bit elongated as well. No mustache there, remove that. Not as heavy set. Not as heavy set as this guy, and a little bit more slim than this guy. So right in between, kind of, to work off of it. But just examples to demonstrate how you could really just borrow a lot of elements. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. It doesn't even have to match much to the original. It's just a motivating factor. It's just there to say, hey, if you need help, it's there for you. If you're kind of stuck somewhere, you could probably try to copy that. It's already on your sketchbook. Another benefit of drawing the model, whatever the reference is, first drawing it in your sketchbook and then drawing off of it, as opposed to working directly from the model, whether it's on screen, whether it's in a book, whatever it is. You have it down on your sketchbook first, and that makes it easier to reference. That makes it easier for your eye to dart to it and back to your drawing. That whole back and forth that allows you to compare and see, how similar is it, or what can I do to make it look more believable, just like it is on here. And plus, again, as I said, it's a great way to warm up. You start to focus. You try to nail down the model as much as possible, so that way it'll be easier for you to work off of it. And your hand is already warmed up, so once you move on to this, you're more flexible. You're in a state of drawing. So multiple benefits there. And what I'm going to be doing today is continuing. I'm going to be doing another example off of this one. This one is going to be probably in between these two guys. Similar, I'm going to say similar head gesture. And I'll probably be coming back to this page along with many others with more work to do on the page. As you guys seen in the previous sketchbook, which I do want to show newcomers, this is the beginning of the week, so why not, venture back into history. This is the previous sketchbook. This is something I just finished while I was streaming for you guys, and the goal was to draw all over the page. Do not miss an opportunity to fill up empty space. That was the goal for the entire book. So different ways to practice hands, a perfect way to fill up the page as much as possible. Even little spaces in between. I didn't miss a chance to try to practice foreground and background drawing, having something in the foreground and trying to draw something in the background. As you could see, like even the mouth and the lips right above the lip that I drew there. But basically, and I did go back, some of these drawings, they're pretty old. I haven't really worked on them in a while, but even comic book panel pages, I still took an opportunity to practice how to draw the figure. practice figure gesture. And there might be some pages where that might not be the case, but overall, as you could see, any space where there was enough room to do some figure drawing, I took that advantage. Excuse me. So this is the book. You guys will see more of it actually tomorrow when I'm going to be doing coloring comics. Today's drawing comics, so, or maybe even today. You know, there's some pages here that still need. Yeah, actually, I'm going to be inking some pages. So, you know, there's some panels here that I still haven't completed. The goal was to fill up the pages as much as possible, and also to continue to draw all these comic panels from the amazing artist John Buscema. Absolutely love this guy's work, as you guys can see. So I'm going to be taking some time after this stream at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to continue inking. And I haven't done that for a while. So that should be pretty fun and exciting. Unfortunately, I'm working on other projects, so I have to keep drawing comics and coloring comics to once a week for now. But we'll see. You know, sometime in the future, maybe I'll be able to do it more often like I was at the beginning, which was like 5 days a week. All right, so just like all the other examples, I like to start off with drawing these guidelines here to make sure that the eyes are leveled. A really important detail, to structure everything in a way so that I don't have to guess and battle. You know, there's that, you know, of course you could work off of your eye, right? You could just eye it and you could be like, well, it looks like it's over here. And that's an effective way of doing it, but what you're not learning is structure, the structure of all that. And what I mean is, like, three-dimensionally, you're not learning how to understand the face three-dimensionally. You're just training your eye, your ability to see detail. So even though you could recognize, and you could be impeccable at recognizing detail, an almost uncanny way of like copying what you're seeing, what you're lacking in that moment is the ability to understand the figure three-dimensionally, to understand all the proportions as they are, as opposed to just lines that you're mimicking on paper. So it's really important, I think, to create these guidelines so that way you can get in the rhythm of drawing the figure in the structural way that allows you to do it in any direction that you want. You know, once you figure that out, once you understand, okay, the ears are supposed to be in between the eyebrow line and the nose line, you know, where the tip of the nose ends or starts, depending which way you're looking at it, from the bottom up or the top down. But then you'll know, like, okay, this is the start and end point for the ear, for example. And it just becomes ingrained in your memory that whenever you draw the figure, that's the range for it, basically. And the line also, as you could see, could give you a better understanding of the perspective as well. So this is more of a curved one, indicating that the head is lifted more. So you would see more underneath features. And what I mean is, like, underneath the nose, underneath the chin area. That sort of thing. And right now I'm just lightly, as I mentioned, I'm just like placeholding features on the face. not spending too much time, even if it looks kind of shoddy, it doesn't look great. You know, you're not seeing the most amazing results from it. The point isn't for it to look that great. It's to know, okay, well, how far is the eyebrow supposed to go up? How far of a distance is it from the eye itself? You know, that sort of thing. And then once you establish that, you could move on to the next feature. So they might be pretty close to each other. Notice I am keeping a distance from the tip of the pencil and not doing this. For multiple reasons, it's easier to actually be to have my hand rest on the table. You know, at this pace, I'm resting my hand on the spiral, so that's one advantage. The biggest advantage is you're able to see the entire drawing. You're not blocking it. You know, if this, let's say this is comfortable, or if it's not the same setup, and you have your hand all the way to the tip, look at what your fingers are obstructing. You can't see anything in this direction. Nothing there, nothing there. Whereas if you keep it at a distance, you see the entire drawing. And that allows you to make more accurate markings. You know, when you are doing these light sketches where you're placing, basically, these are placeholders. Not detailed, nothing specific, just, you know, a brief kind of marks. So I'm noticing that the gap between, another really important detail, the gap between the nostril right here and the corner of the eye can't be too long. Not for this example. And in general, that is an area you really want to study. You know, in certain cases, it might be a little bit longer, you know, but it kind of works with the rest of the features because everything else is kind of elongated. And it is a more of a stylized kind of approach to the drawing, as opposed to having more of a realistic vibe to it. But it is very, very important to pay attention to. If you're trying to work on more of like a hyper-realistic approach, you know, you're really trying to nail down the likeness of your reference or whoever it is that you're drawing. That area, this area right here, the one from the corner of the eye to the nostril, very, very important area to study. You want to make sure that you do a good job there. And as you can see, I'm not really sticking to all the lines and all the placeholders. Like, I'm moving things around as I go, basing it off the reference, basing it off of the photo. You could just little by little adjust things. It's never too late. It's never too late to just move things around, as long as you're not pressing incredibly hard on the pencil, which is why I emphasize it's a very important stage at the beginning of your drawing, to make sure you don't do that because of that specific reason. If things aren't placed in the right direction as you're doing it, with me, it's a little bit less likely. I've been practicing a really long time, so it seems as if though there is no need for it, but I could reassure you it definitely is necessary. Like, even still, there are points where I need to erase it, or I need to move things around and so on. And if you're a beginner, you're more likely to do that way more often. So to make that process less frustrating, it's better to teach yourself this good habit of drawing lightly, because you will make mistakes and things are going to look bad. And rather than saying, it's okay, I'd rather just keep flowing, not adjusting, not changing things around, or getting frustrated with the fact that you have to. It's important not to deny yourself an opportunity to fix things and make it look better, as opposed to saying, no, I'm making the right lines, and just blindsiding yourself for the sake of, seeing yourself as flowing through the drawing. It's a really bad mistake there, to deny that opportunity, to say, I made that mistake, let me go back and try to make it look better. Let me adjust a little bit and try to make the drawing look even better. That's where you grow, because you recognize what's off and you don't miss an opportunity to change that, so that you don't make the same mistake again, or to really work on it and be like, okay, for the future, this is what I need to do in order to make it look better. So really important step to go back and fix whatever looks wrong. And it's also kind of like a metaphor for life, right? It's like, you could just skip over what you've done wrong, whether it's towards yourself or towards somebody else, and you could just pretend as if though it's no big deal. But it's still going to be there. That mistake is still going to be there, and unless you correct it, it's going to screw things up for you. Whether it's somebody else and they're going to be upset, or look at you differently because you don't want to recognize where your flaw was or where your mistake was when it came to the interaction, or how you treated somebody, or lack of, or whatever it is. And of course that depends on the relationship, whether it's worth it or not. But if it is worth it, then it's absolutely worth fixing things. So it's a bit of a metaphor. If you could get yourself to fix your drawing, that's something that you could take away for other instances as well. You could reflect and think back and be like, maybe that wasn't right. Let me try to fix that. Let me see if I could do something to make things better. And at the end of that, you'll feel better, because you'll know, like, you put in effort, you did what you could. And, as opposed to just leaving it and not doing anything about it. But the emphasis is trying to do whatever you can. And that's towards both, interaction with people who you really care about, or that really matter to you, and your drawing as well, your skill development. This guy has like a bit of a smug face expression. A little judgy. But yeah, going back to the drawing, like you could see how still it resembles this face. You know, there's certain things there. It's not a necessary thing. You don't need to exactly. As I mentioned, it's very moldable. This scenario, this example, all this is just very, it's very moldable. You could do whatever you want with it. It's just an opportunity to start somewhere, as I mentioned, you know, to work off of something. And to build, like you don't need to follow exactly how this looks, but if you get stuck somewhere, let's say you're just like, the eye doesn't look really good. You can always refer back to the model and you could be like, the eye looks pretty good there. Let me just borrow that element and try to draw similar to that. Hey Jay, Jay Aller asks, and how important is it to consume other artists' work to know what is going on with your own art? Well, it really depends. I mean, consuming, would you say it's like drawing exactly like them? You know, there's a real fine line between plagiarism and just working off of their work. You know, for instance, I personally like to use it similar to how it is here, where you're not copying exactly the person's image, right? Like this is off of a photograph. It's more of just an example of like, okay, what can I do with it? And as you could see, each of the models, they're different from each other. This one isn't very much like it. It's just borrowing little elements. Jay Aller asks, like just watching their creative process. Well, I think it's fine. You know, that's really up to you. It's a matter of like how much time you want to dedicate to drawing, right? You could spend an hour or two looking at your work. It really depends on how much free time you have, because I would say the best amount of time that you could spend per day drawing to really get better is probably 3 hours, at least. I'm going to say it's of course a lot more if you really want to push yourself to the next level, but you know, pretty much any of the artists that I've mentioned in my previous streams, like Gil Elfgren, Alex Raymond, you've seen Joe Madureira's work on here, Kim Jung-ji, you know, these are all artists that I was talking about prior. They all spend all day pretty much drawing. So it's important, you know, if you're beginning, to just kind of break down your day and be like, okay, I'm going to dedicate, let's say, an hour and a half studying somebody's work, looking at their work. And it's totally fine if you're just beginning to copy their work exactly as it is. That's learning, you know, whereas if you take it to like trying to sell the work or trying to produce work like a comic book with exactly their style, you know, there are artists who do that and they're very successful, but why go that far, get really good, and not push yourself to develop your own voice? You know, like I've seen artists who are copying somebody that I've followed as well, to the T, where you look at it and you're like, it's this other guy's work exactly. And they're really good at it. It's not like they're bad. They're excellent at the composition, the figure, and all that stuff. But if you push yourself, like that's a lot of work to get to that level. If you push yourself to get to that point, why not take it the step further and explore and see like what kind of style you can come up with? So, you know, there's really, it really depends on what you're trying to do here. So as far as learning goes, go for it. You know, as you guys see in my other streams, I'm working on John Buscema's comics, and I absolutely love his work. I think it's amazing. There's a lot to learn from it. And I'm not trying to sell it as my work. I'm not saying, hey, look, you know, buy these panels and it's my stuff. It's the opposite of that. I'm just showing you guys the work. And it's also just fun to get involved in that process that they did, you know, to create the panels. It's like reading a book. You know, when you're reading the book, you're not actually claiming to be the author. You're experiencing what they wrote out, what they're creating. So it's a similar, for me personally, it's a similar experience when it comes to drawing from their work as well. It's kind of like reading, but through creating the work with a pencil rather than your mind. You know, when you're reading it, you're constructing the images that they're constructing. You're constructing the characters that they're constructing. But with drawing, it's with a pencil. You're doing it with a pencil. And, you know, you're going through that process, and it's fun. And you learn in that process, like, hey, how do I draw face expressions? How do I draw, how do I draw the figure? How do I draw backgrounds? You know, how do I draw a car? How do I draw things in perspective? Like, all that is there for you to pick up on. That's there for you to learn, get your feet wet, you know, because eventually one day you're gonna get that project where it's gonna challenge you to do that. And rather than being completely new and just not knowing where to go, you have that experience. You drew from comics at some point. You know, you studied this person's work, and you know what it's like to start off. You know, first I'm gonna create the panels. I'm gonna use the ruler and create the boxes that I need to fit the page. Next, I'm gonna try to lightly sketch everything within the panel, etc., etc. So all that stuff really helps and prepares you for when you actually do have that challenge, or when you get that commission, or when you get that job or whatnot. In order to feel more comfortable, feel a little bit more at ease, because it is intimidating to have to do that. You know, when you're just starting out, when it's your first commission, when it's your first paid job or whatever, you know, that could be a little bit nerve-wracking. You know, you can ask yourself, hey, can I do this? So all this stuff, you know, as you were asking, Jay, you were saying, like, just watching their creative process, all that is there to help guide you there to get to that point. And hopefully that answers your question. But great question. And to me, I still marvel at it. You know, there's some videos that I watch on Instagram, and just compiling these special intros about Gil Elfgren, just reading through what their process was like. what they had to do. It's very motivating. It's like it really it puts you in that world, kind of, and that's really exciting. I think it's really important to do that stuff, to stay motivated. Like for me, it's also another really challenging thing every day. I've come to a point where I don't even think about it anymore. I'm not like, what could I do to motivate myself? I just kind of sit down. But I noticed that when I sit down and like look at somebody's work, or read about their work, pick up a comic book and flip through it and just start observing the panels and studying that, trying to find new material for comic books, just immersing yourself in all that stuff really gets the creativity flowing. I get excited about it and I'm like, oh, look at this beautiful stuff and I want to create something like that. And you look at it and you're like, I want to get myself to that level of creativity or work or whatnot. So it's a fun process. It's not just about like, what do I do next, or however it is. It's great. It's a great way to start your day. It's a great way to get motivated. And I'm trying to establish a better habit for myself, just to wake up and instead of the very first thing being to look at is like social media, have it be like a comic book that I'm really into right now, or some work or some book that has some artistic work in there for me to observe and get motivated by. It's a lot of fun. So I'm trying to switch basically my habits, because it is and I think a lot of people are consumed by it because of all this crazy political stuff, the pandemic, and people being shut-ins for some time. I think people got in the habit of doing certain things to socialize, and that being social media. So I kind of got in there into this like habit of staring at this stuff, and I'm just trying to work myself out of that. Like I don't want to be stuck on social media for hours. Jay Aller asks, or says, and I would say there is a next level when you're able to narrate something only through the composition. Yeah, that's also another thing. Though I wonder, like, I don't know how only through composition would work, because you really do have to consider a lot of things. Like you got to consider the anatomy, right? You got to consider the face expression. I mean, it really depends on what you mean when you're saying composition. If it's more of an abstract thing, yeah, absolutely. You could just you can create a certain emotion, you can invoke a certain emotion and feeling through abstract compositions or abstract work. But when it comes to comics, I think there's a lot of things that are in play to make like an excellent panel, to make an excellent drawing, but composition plays a huge role in it. I mean, it could make or break a drawing. Like there's certain like I was mentioning when I was looking at images when I'm compiling Gil Elvegrin's story and all the influences that he had, all the people he admired, and looking through their work and paying attention to his contemporaries, people who he studied with or who were his colleagues or whatever. Some of them were great at rendering, right? They would draw the face, they would draw the body excellent, very well. But if you look at the overall painting, it's something like what you're talking about. The composition just wasn't there. There was something about it where it just was kind of stark. You look at it and you're like, But that's also subjective, because other people could look at it and they could be like, oh, that's really great. I really like that. But there are elements, there's definitely things that once you grasp, it'll catch the eye of a lot of people, even those who have more of a subjective taste. They could be like, oh, that's great composition, or they were able to really center the attention or the story, as you're mentioning, in a painting. So yeah, that you're absolutely right. Composition plays a huge role, and to make a great drawing, you kind of have to encompass all of those things. You gotta think about, like, what's the angle, right? Like the camera angle. What is that going to be like? What's the story here? Is there a story? Is there a theme? Do I want to make the person think about it? How believable are the people that I'm drawing? Like, as far as rendering goes, what about the lighting? All right. Sorry about that, y'all. Something happened there. So Jay Aller asks, what do you think about AI making all those pictures? I remember there was an app that people ask questions and they're like, hey, can you draw the very end of something? Or just like anything abstract, and then this like app would do it. I mean, it's interesting. It's cool, but I don't think it's the same as somebody's creativity or message or idea, because essentially you're asking the app to do something. The app isn't generating its own ideas and concepts and message or anything like that. It's just like, hey, what do you need? And then you say it, and then it just makes it. It's entertaining. It's definitely awesome. I really like the idea of developing AI, and it's something that I talked about in other streams of the Art Lounge Alley, mentioning series like Westworld, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a show basically about an amusement park, a time period of amusement park, so like an actual Westworld or the Roman era, and all the people there are AI. So like, it's just interesting how they're developing these different apps and technology that allows computers to start generating its own thoughts, its own interpretations of words that we give, and kind of like building this memory bank of things and seeing what it's capable of doing when you interact with it. Like, I think that's awesome. But I think that it's not going to substitute like a person who is, having their own experience and having their own taste, having their own interests. And that's kind of like another really fascinating thing about the special intros that I've been compiling, is that I'm seeing like despite all of them studying together, despite them sharing common interests as like other artists that inspired them to pursue their field and to pursue what they're doing, despite that commonality, their work is very different. You know, like work of Gil Elvgren is not the same as Andrew Loomis. It's not the same as Norman Rockwell. Like all those guys were connected with one another. You know, they were inspiration for one another, and they've worked on stuff together or been in school together, but still they ended up having their own very personal kind of creativity. Like you look at it and you could be like, oh yeah, that's Andrew Loomis's work, you know, or that's Rockwell's work. So I think that's something that for now, you know, I'm always excited to see where they would take that that idea, like what the next level of it would be. But I think all that is what really makes art so interesting. You know, like the individual perception of whatever, you know, what their interest is, what their aesthetic is, that sort of thing. And I'm a little bit bugged by how much automation is taking over when it comes to certain things like that. When it comes to like creativity, I think, you know, it shouldn't be, I don't see it substituting, you know, but I think it's being pushed for that reason. Like, it's kind of like a capitalistic endeavor. Like, the less amount of people we get to hire or do and just fully depend on technology to do things for us to gain as much capital as possible, the better. You know, so it's just, I'm kind of like in a gray area when it comes to that. I do think that certain things that are automated would be great, as long as there's something that allows people to have work, you know, to have opportunity to make money and to survive, basically, you know, like to be independent, self-sufficient, because a lot of these corporations are doing exactly that. They're just trying to like have as much work done by robots as possible and kind of leaving the economy to dry because they want more profits, you know. So they got like one worker doing 50 jobs when it should be like 4 or 5 people doing it. And now that that's being challenged, they're like, well, we're just going to make everything automated. And that's a huge problem. I kind of went on like a tangent about all this other stuff, but, you know, just getting back to what Jay was asking, yeah, I do think it is interesting. I think that it's a pretty cool result, you know, pretty cool indication of what we're capable of creating when it comes to AI and automation. I mean, I've seen even like videos of you know, similar to like talking about Westworld, talking about like these, you know, real looking people, like very, very convincing faces and very convincing motion, like the way the mouth is moving when they're talking. You know, it's becoming closer and closer to very convincing robots, basically. What about you? What do you think? What do you think about automation? Like, what do you think about, what kind of jobs do you think are great for being substituted by machines, and what jobs shouldn't be? Like, what's your thought on that, Jay? Jay Aller says, it is so scary how close they are to real people. Yeah, it's kind of weird. It is a little bit weird. I think they'll probably leave certain elements as of course, like an indicator that this is going to be, this is a robot you're dealing with. Like, I'm thinking, there should always be jobs that people who aren't skilled, don't have a specific kind of skill, that would be able to take. Like, for instance, if you're working at a supermarket, absolutely necessary. It's a job that we all, obviously, as we saw through the pandemic, like, we need people to do that kind of work. We need people to come in and be able to do all that, and provide that sort of service. So, like, I think there should always be jobs like that available. If you're new to some place or something, or you're looking for ways to build your way up or whatnot, I think that should be available for people, as opposed to just having robots, so, like, I can imagine in the future where those kind of things are going to be automated, where you go into a supermarket and if it's not you doing the self-checkout thing, it's like a robot there that's going to do it for you. You just have to, like, push your groceries and it, like, sorts and organizes things and scans them in ways that you in ways to, like, charge or whatnot. They already have, like, in certain McDonald's are, like, testing out, like, these actual robots that you put, like, the people who prepare the food, they put it on the robot, and a robot, like, tracks its way around to the table where you're sitting and brings the food for you. And Jay Aller says, I think automation is good to us to be able to get to the next level of many things. If you don't have to worry about, for example, the fabrication of small pieces, then you could be more focused on actually using all the potential of mass production and work on the concept you need. Yeah, if you're looking at it, of course, if you're looking at it from a person who's producing things, it's beneficial because it's less having to deal with all the different people and all the drama that plays into having to communicate with everybody to make sure that everything is set in motion. But what good is the product if the economy is broken? Like, if people are really screwed economically, financially, and all that other stuff, where they can't even afford the products that you're buying, and it's a very small window of people who actually can. So I think there has to be, like, there has to be some sort of substitution there. If certain things are better for production, as far as, like, automation goes, great, but there has to be something that allows people to have money for themselves, that allows them to survive and to save and to live a good life and buy the products that are being made. Whereas what I think that's going on a lot now is that it's only just being focused on the efficiency of production, without thinking about the economy without thinking about the people. So people are getting laid off because of automation, without any substitutes, without any opportunities for people to be able to transition into something that allows them to make money and stuff. Jay Aller says, for AI picture generations, I don't think that those will ever replace artists, because even if AI is great to generate some pictures, humans still need this creative and meaningful work of an artist. Yeah, that's, I think in general, like, we're still the type of people who enjoy creativity. We want to create stuff not because we want to make a buck or because that's a job or whatever. It's because we're very expressive and we like this idea, like as humans, we like this idea of like, interpreting reality in our own way, interpreting reality through our own vision and experience, and expressing that, whether it's through music, whether it's through drawing, writing, sculpting, architecture, whatever it is. Like, that's just how we function. So I don't see that ever going away. And I think, we're always going to be fascinated by each other's ability or each other's way of expressing all those things, since we like interacting, we like social connection and interaction, and we have this very intrinsical sort of connection to one another, whether it's like through music. When somebody feels a certain emotion, you feel like you're feeling those emotions as well, and people start dancing, and it's not music that's being played by something, it's being played by other human beings, and that music drives us to move our bodies to what they're singing about, what their voice is